Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is one of the last conversations we're probably going to have in the series of conversations we've had on mental health. Thank you so much for tuning in all through the week and participating in this series. Today, we have with us Abhishek, a former UPSC aspirant and currently a consultant with KPMG, who's going to share his story with us and also answer or take in any questions that you may have regarding the process and moving on. Thank you so much for supporting us through this initiative all through. And we'd love if you could participate actively in the conversation. Feel free to add your comments and you can raise a request and we will allow you to speak. Hopefully Sargam joins in a while and she will also have comments and questions to add and ask. So I am going to start with Abhishek introducing himself and his journey. Abhishek, do you want to go on? You'll have to accept being a speaker. I think I have sent you an invite. Abhishek, will you please accept your speaker invitation? You will be able to speak only then. You see the invite, Abhishek? While Abhishek accepts our request to join in as a speaker, I'd like to inform all of y'all that the conversation is being recorded. So, in case you want to come back to it at any point in time, you can do so, and you can also share it with your friends who are probably not able to join us right now, but would be interested in listening to the conversation. Abhishek, can you raise a request to speak? I will approve that. You should then be able to speak. While Abhishek joins in the conversation, I'd like to ask any of you if you want to start, share any thoughts that you may have about the process. Anyone at all? You can raise a request. I'm seeing Ambuj here again. Ambuj, thank you so much for supporting this initiative and being part of our conversations. It is encouraging to see people who have been with us throughout the week. Hi, Shubham. Please go ahead. I think I've approved your request.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Uh, well, first about Shores UPSC, it was like few months back. I just watched this page over Twitter, and really, this is one of the first kind of initiative for the people who just finish their attempts, or the people who are just uh, moved away from the UPSC preparation. So, congratulations to you and your team.
Thank you so much, Shubham. Thank you. It is very heartening to see a lot of people join and be part of these conversations and initiatives. And thank you so much for your kind words. We are hopeful it's of help to more number of people. Thank you.
But I think it is it need to be more shared. Like there are very less people who know about such kind of initiative. Even I just came to know about this few months back.
Right. So any suggestions, we're open to that. And anything that uh, Shores as a community can do to ensure we reach more number of aspirants so that the peer support that is required is available to people.
These kind of talks you can just have in 15 days, or to bring up the civil servants who are serving, to the aspirants, to the teachers. We can just like uh, institute teachers who are honors of institutions, various coaching institutions, and this is how some stories beyond UPSC, those people who have excelled in some other spheres, and when they were aspirants and later on. So this is how it can be raised.
Right, right. Thank you so much for that, Shubham. We're working in that direction. Uh, Hopefully, we're able to reach more people and keep sending us any suggestions or any thoughts that you have, either via DMs on Twitter, or you can email at shawsbeyondupsc@gmail.com. Thank you so much for that. Anyone else wants to say anything? Uh, Anyone who's preparing for the upcoming prelims and wants to share any thoughts on that? I doubt there are any current aspirants, so most of us are ex-aspirants. Great. I'm just going to check with Abhishek and get back. Hi, Abhishek. I have approved your request. I think you can speak now. Yes. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Yes,
There was a technical glitch. I'm really, really sorry for the delay.
it's completely okay. Please do introduce yourself and your journey so that we can quickly get into the conversation now.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Abhishek, and I'm currently working as a consultant with the Government and Public Services vertical at KPMG India. Prior to this, I finished my master's in public policy between 2020 and 2022 at National Law School, Bangalore. Before that is where I share my common journey with all of you. I was a civil services examination aspirant for about 3.5 years between 2017 and 2020, and yeah, my interest in public policy was a result of my preparation for the exam. And while I made my peace with the fact that I would not be a part of the bureaucracy, I'm just glad my interest in public policy remained intact and I found my way outside. And apart from that, I'm an engineer, industrial engineer, with a background in supply chain operations and organizational design. So that's me, and thank you for having me, Jeet.
Thank you so much, Abhishek, for that introduction. So, from industrial engineering, if I get it correct, yeah, to UPSC preparation,
Yeah.
to deciding to prepare for the UPSC. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? How did you
Um,
how did you think that was a fit career path to take?
So obviously, as the adage goes in India, you first become engineers and then you become whatever else that you dream of becoming. So I think I am a byproduct of that thought process as well. But over the end of my engineering life, I had this inkling to move towards the development sector, in the areas of development management and research and to some extent public policy. But I never really had the conviction to follow up on it. So I decided to go the more tried and tested route, sitting for campus placements, getting placed, um, working with a notable firm, Jubilant Life Sciences, and I worked there for about a year. And that year is when I decided, when the lack of not following up on my dreams started to catch up with me. And I think about a year into the work, I decided I will quit my job, which was decently paying, and I decided to go forward with my dream of becoming a civil servant, particularly an Indian Foreign Service officer. But yeah, so I quit in May 2017, and thankfully, my family and my friends were really happy with the decision about me pursuing my dreams and what I really liked. And maybe to some extent, quitting a comfortable job, comfortable life, with something that was extremely uncertain, just in pursuit of that one small dream. So yeah, that was me building myself up to the civil services, and then 3 years. The first attempt I couldn't clear prelims. The second attempt, the second I in the second attempt I cleared prelims, and the third attempt too I cleared prelims. So it's just unfortunate that in my last attempt I couldn't clear mains. I missed out by close to, I think, 20 marks for the interview cutoff. That was slightly painful, but yeah, so that's when I decided that I don't want to spend another year preparing for the exam, and I decided to apply for a few fellowships, dip my feet into the world of public policy. I did a fellowship you called Young Leaders for Active Citizenship. It's a policy in action fellowship where I worked with a Rajya Sabha member. I prepared a policy brief for the Rajya Sabha member on the personal data protection bill. And after a few months after that, I got my admission into National Law School, Bangalore. So that has been my journey from engineering to UPSC preparation and into public policy right now.
Great. Okay. So, mm, so because this exam and and the portrayal of the exam and the preparation is such that a lot of us change our lifestyles, change the way we used to do things. So, how has that been for you? Was the preparation phase life changing in terms of uh, your entire routine, your mental health, psychological well-being? How has that been?
So I think most of the aspirants with here would probably agree with me. Say that like a large part of the preparation is about the discipline, right? You get up every morning. You know that you have to finish a certain syllabus by the end of the day. You have your daily targets, your weekly targets, your monthly targets, and you work backwards, thinking in mind you'll complete a couple of revisions before the final exam. So the best part of having that preparation was slowly, initially studying so much becomes very overwhelming, and the initial couple of months are just is just about like, how do I manage so much information? But then I think the best part of fall in love with so much to study. You fall in love with the world around you because you get to know it better. And then apart from that, it also helps you with a sense of discipline, because now you might not, I mean, you know for a fact that the odds are stacked heavily against you, but you still wake up in the morning in pursuit of that one dream. And that is probably amongst the best part, that you do it despite all odds stacked against you. You keep falling in love with the subjects, with the exam, with the bureaucracy, with government, and with so much more, the idea of governance and public service, that you want to get up every day, study and work towards it. And even if you fail a year later, you want to keep doing it again and again. So I think the best part about this has been that endless love for knowledge, endless love for discipline, and endless love for public service.
Hmm. Right. So this is the initial attraction of the preparation phase and the initial high that you get from studying and knowing
Right.
all of that. But at any point in time throughout the journey of your preparation, did you self-isolate? Did you, put these sort of self-imposed restrictions on yourself on doing certain things or socially engaging with other people in any form?
So yeah, like this is so of course, when preparing for this exam does involve making a lot of sacrifices, right, to your social life and whatnot. So you subject yourself to a hard routine, you subject yourself to a lot of sacrifices, and uh, it all, like, even though you might have a great support system, but still, the beginnings of self-worth tend to take root here, because now everything that you do every day, everything that you do or you don't do, is tied to how you see yourself preparing for this exam, and by extension how you see yourself working for the people, working as part of the government. So your entire sense, what I do today, is innately tied to how I see myself working for the government. So by default, even though every exam, every sort of effort involves a certain degree of sacrifices, but preparing for this exam to a large extent makes you feel that your whole identity, your whole self-worth, and is tied to this particular exam, because you will become a bureaucrat, you will become someone who will take important decisions. And if you can't sacrifice, you convince yourself saying that if you can't sacrifice something today, how will you work for the people tomorrow? And tomorrow, if you don't happen to pass the exam, if you fall short of passing the exam by a few marks, you always tend to see that, okay, it's particularly these couple of weeks or these couple of days I didn't work hard enough. So maybe if I would have worked hard enough, I could have cleared this exam. And your entire sense of success, self-worth, identity, everything becomes tied to every day of effort that you put in, which in hindsight is, while it might seem necessary, but only when you transition out of the cycle, or when you sort of make it to the civil services, you realize how hard you start being on yourself. You realize what toll it takes on you in terms of the expectations that you keep from yourself, the punishments, the mental punishments that you subject yourself to, the narratives that you fall to, and the arguments, the constant rationalization that you subject yourself to, about how I could have done better, or how I didn't do better, or how it was my fault, or how, I mean, just arguments that make you feel that you're inadequate, or maybe you could have done so much better than what you have already done. So,
Right. So you mentioned mental punishments.
yeah.
What mental punishments did you put yourself through, and is any of that still continuing, or luckily all of that is a thing of the past?
If only I had the luxury of saying it was all a thing of the past, but I think quite a lot of aspirants or people who have transitioned out of the exam would agree that high expectations from yourself, rigid expectations from yourself, become a norm during the preparation of the exam. And mental punishments might take the form of how you want to overcompensate by studying extra the next day. It starts with that, and then you constantly start having expectations from yourself, and the worst tendency is to like retrospectively analyze about what might have caused your failure to pass the exam with flying colors. Like you just start rationalizing that okay, it is because of this reason that I probably took a 1 week break, that I probably fell short of through 2 3 marks in the exam. Or if I would have studied extra, if I would have practiced a few more answers, maybe my mains would have been better. Or I should have attended a few more test series. Or it's that constant sort of expectation from yourself to keep doing better. While it is necessary in every part of life that you want to expect yourself to do better, but in this case, it takes a very unhealthy turn, because um, that exam holds so much importance to you that you don't feel like giving your best in anything else in life. Uh, that is one of the sad fallouts, at least for me, that even after getting into a prestigious university, a prestigious course, and while professionally it has worked out for me, it took a long time for me to be emotionally happy about where I am. I'm still learning how to be emotionally happy about where I am, because for the longest time I defined myself as a failure because I just couldn't clear one exam. And I couldn't see myself as being happy about all the opportunities in life, about all the support system that I have, because I think I just assumed I disappointed people for despite all their support. I just kept feeling that I've let down a lot of people, I've let down myself. And like it should have we always think that we can easily crack the exam just with some more practice, but I couldn't do it. And there's this constant sense of like your own self-worth is attached to that exam, that for the longest time you don't find your happiness in all the other small wins. And it is only after some time when we start getting out of this vicious cycle that we realize that small wins in other parts of life are as important. And for me, for me to get to know the power of small wins and then look at the bigger wins became the toughest part in life, because I wasn't happy about most things. Everything was about the exam. I considered myself a failure for the longest time. So this exam even though it leads to a very prestigious position in governance, it is among the most coveted positions in the government. But it preparing for the exam has the danger of making you fall into a trap where the exam becomes the end all and be all of what you consider your self-worth. So yeah.
Right, right. So from the preparation phase moving to the post preparation phase,
Right.
how and when did you decide that you've had enough and you want to move on?
So I always promised myself before taking the exam that I wouldn't take the exam again if it was about my ego and more than serving the people of the country. So a lot of aspirants keep taking the exam with a certain ego that okay, I couldn't clear it last time with just this many marks, but I'm still going to do it next time. But I was very clear that for me, the idea of public service was just too pure to be diluted by my own personal ego. And when I couldn't clear mains, as disheartening as it was, I just decided that one more attempt would take one more year out of me. And I was also in the danger of fostering an unhealthy attitude towards the exam, where it was not about the ultimate goal of becoming a foreign service officer and representing India, but it became about clearing the exam itself. The exam is just a means to a greater end. But for me, the exam itself started becoming an end, which is why I realized that I need to explore other opportunities in life, because I can't have this unhealthy attitude for inside me for another year. So that is when I started exploring fellowships, because I wanted a short-term commitment where I knew the intricacies of public policy, where I could explore the intricacies of public policy, network with people in this space before I was ready to make a longer commitment, a more serious professional commitment. So that's when I applied to my policy in action fellowship. And this is where I sort of make a distinction between, professionally, that you want to explore other opportunities in life, but the emotional part of you is still rooted to the exam. It still thinks that you're a failure. and it still thinks that okay, if you're not given this exam, nothing is going to be as good as a civil services. You're not going to learn more because whatever I learned in the last 3 years of preparing for the exam, I'm not going to learn anywhere else, and it's going to take a lot of time for me to learn all the information that I could, what I did in 3 years with the UPSC prep, and that was amongst the toughest part. While professionally, I think I was comfortable exploring opportunities outside of the civil services examination preparation, but making healing the emotional part of it has been the most difficult part, which I have started to work on since last November. So that the professional and the emotional aspects of it have been quite at loggerheads with each other.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about how you're working on it since you said you started to work on it?
So I realized I was not happy about a lot of things in life. Like, as I've already previously mentioned that like I'm just grateful that okay, I am at a prestigious university, a good course, good professor, great peers, and everything. But there, the sense of joy was still tied to me preparing for the exam and me dreaming of becoming an IFS officer. So that happiness in dreaming could not be replicated in me being happy about my own course, about my own professional standing outside of the civil services examination. So that was the toughest part to reconcile. And I realized that I need help when I got a job with KPMG, but I was not happy about it. Uh, and I know for a fact that even though my core interest is in technology policy and governance, and consultancy is a lot more all encompassing in terms of the sectors or the clients that I work for. But my happiness was not about me not being in technology policy, but it was rather about me not becoming an me sort of coming towards the end of my UPSC dream, because I was not ready to face that. I was trying to run away from the very possibility that like even though everything I was doing since January 2020 was moving away from the UPSC exam cycle, but for me to come to terms with it and face it, it took the longest time. I was not ready to even talk to myself about it. That okay, I'm with my start at KPMG, I'm formally ending my dream of becoming a civil servant. And I knew that I had to work on this when I was not happy about getting that job. I knew there was something wrong there. I mean, I knew my sense of self-worth had to change. It had to, if I have to become a successful public policy professional, I have to emerge out of that lens of that exam that I see myself from. And this continued sense of validation and identity that has been the civil services exam, for all its glory, has also been a cause of great mental distress for not just me, for a lot of aspirants out there who still think that this exam is the best thing that they can ever do in their lives. While it is one of the good things, if you become a civil servant, it is amongst the best things, but the thing about that is like you can be a lot more in life, and all of the things are best, and all of the things uh, are among the best opportunities that you can get in that context and in that mind frame. So it took a long time for me to make peace with that.
Would you say you made peace with it now? Is it, are you in a place where you can claim that?
I wish I could say yes, but all I can say is that at least since the time that I've been to therapy about it, when I've started talking to my therapist about how my sense of self-worth and identity is just tied to one exam, and how that night, and how that even though all successes that I can attain maybe in the next 15 to 20 years, I still think all of it can just be belittled by the fact that I woke up on January 16, 2020, when I got my mains ka result at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I realized that I didn't make it to the interview round. Like, I mean, even though so many, like hundreds of successful moments can be belittled by one moment of failure, is something that I'm still uh, that I'm still trying to work out. Even now, I would say that I'm in a place where I have acknowledged the fact that I've not been happy for a long time, that I have tried to explore other uh, other things in life which I know is part of my identity, my self-worth, and not the exam itself. So yeah, I think I am making small progress in that front by acknowledging that there is a problem and by talking about it. But yeah, so I still, I mean, even though I wish I was in a better place, I can only say that I think I like where I'm heading mentally.
Right. And since you mentioned identity, sense of self, self-worth, because you've been through the whole transition process, anything actionable that you have for our listeners who may want to transition and who are feeling the same things that you've mentioned? Anything that you would suggest to them to take forward or to adopt in order to feel better?
Right. So, uh, like, I just wish, there's a reason why I particularly admire Shoresby and UPC. It is that it takes a very kind approach for somebody who's trying to deal with with failure in the civil services examination. It takes a very kind approach. We see a lot of people dissing the civil services, disrespecting the civil services, which is not what an aspirant, any aspirant worth his or her salt. Does knows that if they want to transition out of the civil services, it is only with a healthy frame of mind. You cannot disrespect the civil services or disrespect any other profession if you're trying to transition out of it healthily. So while it is true that you might want to explore other opportunities in life, uh, what helps in understanding is that the civil services is just one of the prestigious institutions that work for the people. Like it's a sad thing, obviously, that a lot of us don't make it, and a lot of us don't get opportunity to work directly as part of the government. But there are a lot of opportunities outside of the government where you work with the government. As a consultant, I can vouch for the fact that we work with governments for managing a lot of projects, for making strategies for their projects, implementing and managing their projects, monitoring their projects. So while I'm not part of the highest decision making authority within the government, I get to explore, I still get to be a part of a mechanism where I work for the people. So I think cultivating a healthy attitude towards civil services and other professions is the first step. Second is like uh, like having a community like shows beyond UPSC makes you feel less alone in the process. At least few years ago, when people had to make the transition out of the UPSC exam, we had to explore opportunities by ourselves. We had to do everything by ourselves. There was no feeling of community and nobody mobilized us. Maybe a random few posts on Facebook, LinkedIn here and there, but there was no community as such where we felt together about and felt less alone about moving out of the civil services exam preparation cycle. So I think uh, being part of a community like at least Shoresby and UPSC is an important part because there you know that you are not alone. And with the fact that we invite so many professionals who have made it so big outside of the UPSC, it is just testament to the fact that now it is a community full of people who can accomplish good things in life outside of the civil services exam preparation. So that would be a second takeaway, that being part of a community helps, being less alone helps. And lastly, it is just that uh, understand what kind of motivation works for you. That during the whole civil service exam preparation cycle, we are all used to the narratives that you should not sleep at night because you have to prepare, because when the world sleeps, the aspirants tend to stay up all night and study so that they can fulfill their dream of becoming civil servants. And then there'll be a lot of other toxic messaging which says that this is your tapasya, this is your sacrifice, all that for one view at LBS, at Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration. You have all these posts coming in that try and motivate you, but understand that those kinds of motivation end up harming you because it doesn't focus on your well-being. It is that it just focuses on the fact that you destroy yourself today for that one moment of glory in the future, and then when you reach that one moment of glory in the future, you'll have nothing to appreciate about in life. You don't want to be in that position, right? So understand what kind of motivation works for you. Like, do you want a more, do you want a healthier perspective? Do you want to take some time off? Do you want to talk to this about your friends? Do you want to ask for help? Do you want to be part of a community? Understand what kind of motivation works for you, because all of us react differently to pressure and to motivation. So that's that.
Right. That was very well put, especially the bit about motivation and toxic motivation, because a large part of this toxicity is linked to the larger narrative around the exam and the glory of the exam, moving slightly away from the whole mental health aspect of the preparation phase. Would you uh, would you have any specific views on how this narrative has to change, or the things about this narrative that are most problematic and that cause issues in lives of aspirants? Like one of them was toxic motivation that you mentioned through all the examples that you gave. But anything else about the narrative that needs to change?
Yeah, this one is pretty close to me because, um, see, a lot of us come from, like, at least some of us. I wouldn't say a lot of us. Some of us, we come from positions where people understand what we are sacrificing a lot of our careers for. Like, when we quit jobs, when we stay at home, when we live with our parents and study for the civil service examination. So uh, like, we know what the civil service examination stands for, um, but and there's nobody to tell us as to, if there is no civil services, what else works, right? So every option other than the civil services is seen as a backup. Now I have a big problem with this narrative because, like, if you're not a civil servant, everything else is not a backup. The fact that governments, private stakeholders, research institutions have so much powerful say, have worked together so much in modern policy making, it is probably a crime to call that any occupation is a backup. The only compromise that you'd have to make is that you don't get to make the top level decisions, which is okay because you're contributing to a lot of expertise, because most of the civil servants are not experts in their fields. If you transition out of the civil services, you have the opportunity to become experts, right? That is not a backup. So as much as respect the civil services as an institution gets, and it deserves, there has to be a lot more respect for institutions that work with the government to serve the people. So, see, whatever, like, an important step for you to transition out of the civil services is to understand that you are not going into a backup option. You are exploring, you're keeping your interest in serving the people intact. You are keeping your interest in particular subjects of the civil services preparation intact. You want to make use of that knowledge and serve your interests or people elsewhere. That is not a backup, that is just an alternative option. We have to hold all these options together and on the same plane with the same importance. Like, we are making a lot of sacrifices in that hope of becoming a civil servant, which is understandable that you would attribute a lot of importance to it. But if we have to transition out of it, we must see the other professions in a more positive light, in a healthier light. So, not as a backup, or not just as a plan B, or a compromise or a trade off, because all the other institutions are respectable as well.
Right. All right. So, has your emotional attachment to the exam or with the exam results, for instance, because the results were announced
Yeah.
recently, has your emotional attachment reduced? What do you feel when you saw the results or saw the reaction to the results?
It was, I wouldn't lie, it was triggering, because over the last few months I've consciously tried to avoid, like, like, at least for my own personal well-being, I've tried to consciously follow civil servants, or, like, news, or like any news articles that celebrates toppers, or they have topper interviews and all that. I've consciously tried to avoid that for the last couple of months, at least last few months, because I know if I have to make certain progress, I have to probably let go of some attachment that I have for the civil services, and for the exam, not the civil services, but the exam itself. So I'd say that it is a healthy sort of detachment. It's not that okay, I have to look away from the exam or something. It is just a healthy detachment that I think I need. If I have to see all these institutions at the same plane, if I have to hold these as a consultant, it's my job to sort of see all these institutions at an equal level. So for me, yes, I think I want to practice healthy detachment and I think I want to get there. And I don't know when and how I will get there, but that is something I see myself consciously wanting to achieve.
Hmm. Right. So now that you work with governments or with government agencies, you see how they work. Do you think, or has any part of your view or opinion changed about how working in the government would be now that you work with the government?
That's a really lovely question. Obviously, working in the government would involve a lot more horizontal coordination, right? I work with a lot of departments. I'm responsible for a lot more projects personally. I'm accountable to the people, and I'm accountable not just to my higher officials, but also to the government as a whole. So, but as a consultant, I'm accountable to my firm. I'm accountable to my boss. Um, I might not be accountable to the people directly, but as my firm gets any sort of contract based on how diligently we work, right? So the government awards contracts to firms only when they know that the firm has done a good job or when they have done a when they have done their due diligence and everything. So indirectly, we are accountable to the people because we have to present information in a neutral manner. We have to say that, okay, the government is doing a good job here and the government can do a better job here. So, in a way, we are indirectly accountable to the people. So, I see there is some difference between working with the government and working as part of the government. But ultimately, the way all these agencies work together for the implementation of even a simple scheme, well, from tourism to healthcare, it just makes you think that no entity can do this alone. No private entity can do this alone. No government can do this alone. It's only with it's only with the capital of the private enterprise. It's only with the expert insights of research institution. It's only with the power of the government and the resources of the government that any scheme or any policy can be given its true form.
Right. So a fairly changed view, you would say. Like you.
For sure, for sure.
All right, great. Um, so people, anyone having any questions can also request, and we will allow you to speak, to share your thoughts or ask any questions. I also wanted to know if how do you see failure now? Has your idea of looking at failure and looking at success changed?
That has been the toughest part of my learning so far because for me, the idea of success and failure was so intertwined with each other, and both of them concern the civil services exam. I still, to a certain degree, feel like a failure for not becoming a foreign service official or for not becoming a diplomat. I still at times consider myself a failure for that, and success is because that I've learned so much as part of the civil services prep. But over time, I don't think I'm there yet, but I can see myself moving in a direction where I see failure as not just from the perspective of the civil services examination, or I just don't see success as part of what I've learned in the civil services exam. Success is I want to be in a place in life where success is about a lot more things in life, my relationships, um, my own small wins apart from the civil service examination, my own sort of achievements that I've had, personal goals that I've had, and I want to expand my idea of failures to other parts as well, because my idea of failure, I don't want to limit it to not being a diplomat. Otherwise, I know I will never grow in life. Everything I will fail in 99 other things, but I will only see failure as part of as the fact that I'm not become a diplomat yet. And I don't want it that way because I want to grow as a person, and that can only happen if I don't see failures just from the lens of civil services examination.
Right. Very interesting. So we have Ashwath who wanted to say something. He was there in our conversation
Yeah.
yesterday, and he is also somebody who at one point wanted to be an a foreign service official. So Ashwath, please go ahead.
Thank you, Cheel. First of all, I want to appreciate the candor with which Abhishek spoke to us about him still feeling those negative feelings even now, because I think it's a process when we're talking about transitioning. It's also a very long emotional process, and everyone goes through different rates in their journey. And I really appreciate the candor with which you've spoken. I think it will be more relatable to different segments of our friends here. To that end, I have two questions for you. First is, okay, so the first one is regarding in how do I put this? So when aspirants go through their prep phase, it often happens that they neglect everything else. So in retrospect, what would you have done differently? Like, knowing what you know now, what would you tell the younger self? That's one. Second, and this is a little bit more practically oriented, given that you are now a professional and you work now. Is there any skill that you would advise aspirants to take up in a limited fashion in their free time, so that they feel at least a little bit more prepared to adapt to a new workplace or be able to transition out more easily should they decide to do so?
Uh, Thanks for the lovely questions, Ashwath. And regarding your first question as to what I would tell my younger self, probably myself who's who's probably still preparing for the civil service examination in an alternative universe. What I would say is that I don't think I would do anything differently because uh, because I knew I came out of the process almost at the right time because I know the toll it was starting to take on me. So the only small thing that I would tell my younger self is that at any point of time, you feel discomfort with your own self, being comfortable with your own self, and you feel unhealthy about, knowledge is important, but if the whole process of gathering knowledge makes you feel bad about yourself, makes you feel inferior, makes you feel unhealthily competitive with yourself, then it's time for you to explore other ways of gathering that knowledge. I would probably tell myself this. And that would, at least I think that would help me see the whole preparation, gathering knowledge, reading books uh, in a very, very different light. I'm not just studying for the exam, but I'm doing this because I want to grow as a person. And as for the second question, what skill sets? So I think one of the best pieces of skill that you can have as part of preparing for the exam would be uh, learning to write. We are already like equipped with our answer writing skills. We know what to write, how to write. We know, we have focused so much on precise articulation throughout the exam process that we know that if there is a question on maybe say the role of governor, right? So we know what to say, what not to say, how to structure it, right? So I think that is some skill that you have to build on because now you can use the knowledge of what you want to write in a longer form. You're not limited by 250 words anymore. So I think one important skill to have is practice writing longer pieces, slightly more analytical and more research based. Because in a lot of companies, they require you. The one thing that they look when they in interviews when they ask you that what was your learning from the UPSC process, a lot of consultancies and a lot of corporates as well, they look for people who are deep generalists and who are comfortable reading a lot of things, writing about a lot of things, researching about a lot of things, and preparing a very, very uh, a well articulated note on any policy, any regulatory analysis. So I'd say, researching more and writing longer form of articles would be probably the most ready skill that you can have as part of your civil services preparation. Once you want to transition out of it, that is.
Right. Thank you for that. Ashwa, thank you for the questions, and you can actually interject whenever you have something to say. Uh, Abhishek, since you mentioned therapy, and because I was curious,
Right.
when did it take convincing for you to, like, did you have to convince yourself to decide to take therapy, or was it something that you thought would be the next best step, and you just decided to do it? Like, was there convincing involved?
So I think one of the most difficult things that not just aspirants but anybody sort of faces is that we struggle to ask for help, right? And like when especially when it comes to emotional things or things in life that hold immense importance to you, when we struggle with that, we are not the greatest at asking for help, and we are not the greatest at being kind to ourselves also, because we tend to respond to guilt and emotional baggage with more guilt and more emotional baggage. It's like, how can I feel this way? I have to feel better. It's not about I want to feel. The response to I want to feel better is I have to feel better. So the end result is that you keep on compounding that feeling, that uh, the guilt and the lack of emotional progress that you've made over the years. You tend to keep compounding that when you don't ask for help. So personally, it's important to recognize when we head towards that breaking point. Uh, I was at that breaking point last November when I realized I am not happy about a lot of things. I have been feeling like this over a year, like from January 2020 to November 2021. If all that's almost 1.5 years, almost 2 years of me feeling not happy, despite making decent professional strides in my own personal expectations. So it's very important to recognize when you are breaking, and secondly, it's very important to be kind to ourselves and not shy away from asking for help. So it didn't take, I wouldn't say it took a lot of convincing for me to go to therapy, because I knew that I was heading towards a breaking point, and if I didn't ask for help now, uh, I would have a really, really bad time going ahead.
Right. Uh, so, would you like to say anything to anyone who's probably reluctant to go to therapy for whatever reasons? Because there is a significant amount of stigma attached to mental health issues and deciding to rectify certain issues. So, is there anything you would want to say to anyone who's reluctant?
Right. Thanks for that. So when I talk about mental health and therapy, right, I am fully conscious about the fact that A, there's a lot of stigma attached to it, and two, access to mental health remedies is still a matter of privilege. It's about whether you can afford therapy. It's about whether finding a good therapist or someone who's willing to make it a safe space for you. So I'm fully conscious about the fact that there are a lot of barriers to access good mental health care, and for, while that is a struggle that I am cognizant of, and I don't want to be insensitive. Uh, an important thing is like just to talk about. I mean, if we find those people where who can, we can't expect everyone to understand what we're going through, right? But we at least need the satisfaction that somebody heard us out. A lot of our dissatisfaction comes from the fact that nobody is able to understand what I'm going through. Nobody can understand the sacrifices that I make. Nobody understands the importance of civil services and this exam like I do. Nobody can understand. We keep bombarding ourselves with these narratives, with these sort of rationalizations that, okay, I have to make myself feel better because nobody else will. And I have been to 3 years of that, fourth year, 5 years and counting. This is the fifth year, 5 years of that, and I'm still going through that. It is only to my therapist that I've opened up. I can't, and I'm ashamed of the fact that I don't even trust my closest friends to understand my problems. And that is not something that I'd want anybody else to have, because that is a very, very huge burden to carry, because everybody in this world is making some sacrifices, everybody in this world is making some struggle. While they might not be empathetic to you, I'm sure at least they will do a mildly decent job of listening to you. If it's not a therapist, at least somebody who will do a good job of listening to you.
Right. Thank you for that. Hopefully, it helps a lot of us who want to or who are at the cusp of deciding whether or not to take therapy. Um, Now, just to end the conversation, if there's anything anyone wants to say, you can please request. Or Abhishek, please leave us with a few parting thoughts on the process, on your journey, on anything you want to say to people who are transitioning at this point in time.
Right. So I'm assuming that the people who have taken time out over here to be here um, are, are a mix of both aspirants and people who are looking to make alternative careers. So people who are still who want to ace the exam, who are still in the process of that exam, I'd say go for it, but make sure that you feel comfortable with yourself during the entire process. Make sure that you listen to yourself. Make sure that you know what's working for you, what's not working for you. Make sure you don't fall into the trap of narratives. You will obviously there's a lot of luck involved, and whether you clear or not the exam, but I'm sure whatever be the case, make sure that the factors that you can control in terms of your own personal well-being, prioritize that. Because whether or not you clear the civil services, you will reach a conclusion that it was not worth it when you are at a breaking when you are broken, or when you are at a breaking point. For people looking to transition out of the civil services, I'd say the world is a much better place right now. The world is a kinder place. So there are a lot of like there are communities like these where you can talk, discuss, feel less alone, and maybe even discuss alternative careers in such communities. So I'd say find like-minded people that you can talk to about your insecurities and your vision for an alternative career with. So feel less alone. If you're trying to make it out of the civil services, your priority should be feeling less alone. So yeah, that.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was very well put. I hope we can do our bit to make everyone feel a little less alone. Thank you. Thank you, Abhishek, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Uh, Hopefully, this was helpful for aspirants who are probably giving the prelims in about a day or two, and for those who are transitioning out. Thank you so much for making the time, Abhishek. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Bye bye. Good
Thank
night.
you, Jeel. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.